TJ, state your name and address for the record, and I'll let you get started with your presentation.
Thank you, Mr. President. TJ Plant, Chief Administrative and Financial Officer for the city, 42 Garfield Street here in Springfield. So last week, the President asked me to come before the Council to kind of give an update on where we are financially and specifically focus on FY18 and what we're looking at. As you know, we started our budget hearings today, and it was all the A&F cabinet, so we all went through our hearings today, but we have hearings basically the next 2 weeks. Before I get started, I'd like to welcome Lindsay Hackett, our budget director, back from maternity leave, so we're thrilled to have her back. Tonight is her first night back, literally, so we welcome her back, but thank you. Welcome back. So on page 2, just a quick agenda. What we're going to talk about is very briefly on FY17, unless you have specific questions you want me to cover, but spend a lot of the time on FY18, kind of the gap, how we got there, what the assumptions are, what do we think for the next few months or so, with a goal of turning the budget over to the council sometime in May. But I'll kind of walk through that. So on page 4, as Comptroller Pat Burns reported last week, or a couple weeks ago to the City Council, really nothing too crazy about where we are halfway through the fiscal year. We're pretty much spot on. We're at 49% revenue. We're at 53% spending. There's some commitments out there that are coming in that will help us bring us to the 50% mark for revenue and spending. Really, we have a couple of expenditures that come up at the beginning of the fiscal year, namely one pension, where on July 1st it is fully paid to PRIT to do the investments for us. But the kind of the highlights, as you may be aware, when we set the tax rate, this was the first year we were able to capture 100% of the new growth, of $4.97 million. This is significant. This represents the first time. We've had a lot of new growth happening, but we've never had the levy capacity to actually capture it. So this is the first time we're able to do it. In fact, we have a very small gap between the levy and the ceiling of a whopping $14,000, but it just shows you all the hard work and that actually the city's on the rebound in terms of all the economic development projects, but also the values of our single-family homes, which are selling at a pretty good rate these days. We'll get into it a little bit later. You may have seen we've issued debt on February 14th at a low interest rate of just over 3%, and this is kind of a very big deal given where we are in terms of where we've come from for our finances, because we have the bond ratings to back up what we were able to sell and market. And I'll get into the strategy of kind of why we did a larger amount this time around and kind of how we locked into rates. On page 5, good news is when you issue $44 million worth of debt, both the major rating agencies, 2 out of 3, want to talk to you and kind of get a sense of where we're going. Moody's reaffirmed our credit rating of A2 with a stable outlook, and S&P maintained our AA-. Both of these are the highest we've had in the city's history, but they really call out in the reports the strong management that it's happened in the city, that we're making the right decisions in order to balance the budget, and that we're really working hard to maintain our reserves, as we've always talk about in the chamber here, and that we're really heading in the right direction. Now, I was hoping that we could possibly get an upgrade, but they want to see more time pass of us having these positive results. So they're very excited what they're hearing and seeing in Springfield, but maintaining what we have is really what we were going for. But those credit ratings really drove the interest rates that we actually received in terms of issuing the debt. Go ahead. The highest you can get in terms of rating is triple A is the highest you can get. The next up from Standard & Poor's is AA. And that's kind of what will be next on our goal is to be AA by Standard & Poor's. Yeah, we're still a couple rungs down, but if you remember back in 2006 and 7, we were near junk bond status, or they call non-investment grade. So this is a testament to all the decisions that we've made as a city in order to balance budgets and to make the right decisions and to address our ongoing issues that we have. On page 6, you'll see that we have for FY18, our basic multi-year financial plan budget gap was $19.3 million. And that is really driven by revenue, where we assume the governor's state aid number, and there's a chart in there for that, and I'll show you what that looks like. 2.5% growth in our tax base, which we've seen in the last few years. No new growth at this point because we don't have enough data from the Board of Assessors to determine if new growth, the size of new growth and what it's going to look like. We have level local receipts in the sense of motor vehicle excise and all those things. And we do not have any major casino revenue factored in other than what's been agreed to in the host community agreement. And that is just by virtue of that the casino is not open yet and we're not realizing all the benefits from the host community agreement. So that kind of brings us to $621 million worth of revenue. As far as the expenses, we're assuming 2% department growth, about a 4% growth in the school department. You'll notice 8% increase in school transportation, 8.7 as of right now in health insurance. Hopefully that'll go down. The GICs are releasing rates the end of this week. And then I know it's near and dear to this body's heart, and certainly Tim Allen, is the pension increase of 14%. So that assumes the schedule that we have agreed to for the next 3 years. As far as the cherry sheet, just kind of go through it. This is one half of the cherry sheet. This is the revenue portion that we get in terms of the receipts. There's also the assessment side that I did not put in because but the key part of the assessment side is the charter school assessments that the school department gets. But you'll note that Chapter 70 has gone up about 3.8%. That is more or less what the school department anticipated, probably a little less given the inflationary factors they use for Chapter 70, but I'll defer to the school department to comment on their own deficits for FY18. We do not get school transportation reimbursements, hence you see the zero. I know that's a bone of contention for this body. Charter tuition has gone up 19.5%. That is great, but when the assessments go up at least that much, if not more, that causes the problem. The governor has been good to us in unrestricted general government aid. That has gone up 3.9%. He has committed and lived up the last 2 years to grow unrestricted general government aid by the same percentage as they grow the consensus revenue figures, and they've been able to do that the last 2 years. Veterans benefits is down $535,000. But that's a reimbursement, 75% reimbursement from the state. So what does that mean is that we're giving out less in veterans benefits, not because we're saying no to veterans, it's just because we have more case managers in the department to help find them the right resources to get where they need to be and get them the right resources. So instead of us paying right away out of the gate, Tom and his team help make sure that they get to the resources they need in terms of fuel assistance, housing assistance, and all that stuff. So, but it is a direct byproduct of less benefits being paid out. We get less in reimbursement revenue, and the rest is just small stuff. So generally speaking, this is what we're assuming. We don't know what the legislature is going to do come April. That's when the House Ways and Means comes out in April, House Final in April, and then Senate Ways and Means in May, Conference Committee in June. So if we get a reasonable assurance that these numbers are going to be somewhat comparable, we'll probably be in pretty good shape to submit the budget on the earlier side this year. If it becomes significantly different between what the House and the Senate are thinking or agreeing to, we'll communicate that to the City Council when we get to that point. Yep, catering. I understand that, but that is not a negative on the veterans. It's a simple fact is that our veterans are not requiring the same level of reimbursements because we're diverting them to other sources that they get better served for. So they're still getting the services they need and everything that they need. It's just we're giving out less benefits from and you'll see, not in this budget, but in the appropriation side, they're spending less. And again, it's not because of need, it's because they actually have as you've advocated for the, correct. We're saying you can get the same level or more services from other places, whether it's a VA hospital or wherever it is. Here's where you can get these services because we're able to give the whole key driver was caseload and the case managers we have. We gave the Veterans Department another case manager who has now helped them provide better better full-time or wraparound services or whatever advice and counseling that they've needed in order to find the benefits. So it's not a negative thing in the terms that it's going down, because the benefits are not being the veterans are not being turned away and being denied benefits. They're still getting them, and perhaps more, but just not from the City of Springfield's general fund. So moving on to, just to kind of give a sense, you have a $620 million budget, and pretty much we don't control our own destiny. Of that, 80% of it is non-discretionary. So when you have to make $20 million worth of decisions, you have to do it on 20% of the budget. So not that we're going to be cutting 20 million or 23 million or anything to that level of cutting out of the budget, but if we make those decisions, that comes on discretionary side. And to give a sense of what discretionary, non-discretionary costs and discretionary costs, turn to slide 10. School department, required net school spending, Chapter 70, that's non-discretionary. Pension, benefits, debt service, long-term contracts, and financial ordinance requirements are all non-discretionary. That means we got to fund those before we fund, which essentially on the next slide is city departments. Maybe not on that slide. On slide 14, on city departments, they're not mandated by law. Those are the services that we provide because that's what we do in terms of providing public service, which is police, fire, DPW, parks, facilities, and what have you. So we always have that in the back of our mind that if you're trying to balance the budget, it's not on a $600 million base, it's on a $126 million base, and so that makes sure we factor that into our decision. But as we try to balance, we try to make sure we do it through a balance of reductions in spending, but also increases in revenue. Lindsay, if you want to go to slide 11. I thought it was important, based upon all the conversations we're having, to talk about pension and debt, because those are kind of two of the major numbers in our deficit. And just so we're all on the same page, pension, we're still the lowest funded pension system in the state at 27%. We have an unfunded liability of $826 million, and we got on an annual contribution for the next few fiscal years to go up by 14% and then 8% the next 2 years. That is an aggressive pay structure that we have. We believe that's the one that's more affordable, that still helps us move forward to not be the lowest in the state. But we still need to work on ways to actually find an infusion of cash in order to make some significant gains. The stock market has been on a tear lately, and so I don't have any numbers to update the City Council on what that actually means for our overall pension liability, but the good news is we're outperforming our assumed actuarial return on investment. So that's the good news, and hopefully it continues. Good. As far as debt, you can see the chart there. We just issued $44.3 million worth of debt. This is really been strategic. We spent a lot of time working on debt structure. How do we set it up so we can afford all the projects that we need to do? The way we typically do projects in the city is the City Council authorizes the debt. The department that is in charge of the project, most usually the Department of Capital Asset Construction or Facilities, does the project. We issue short-term borrowing until the project's done, and then we take out long-term debt. What made this authorization, or this issuance unique rather, is we saw that the market was in historic lows or near historic lows. We knew our credit rating was at a level that was going to allow us to capture and take advantage of those low interest rates. So we actually locked in as much as we could forward in our debt schedule to be able to take advantage of 3% for all these projects I mean, 3% on the average. I want to be clear, it's not 3% for all of them, but it averages out to 3% for 20 years for all this, which is a tremendous time for us to lock in. So projects that we would have issued debt for in a year or two when they're done, we're locking in now and adhering to a strict schedule for construction to make sure that we're in IRS compliance. But this is tremendous news. This saves us. I mean, this put in perspective, we have a refunding opportunity coming up where we issue debt for 4.5% to 5%, and then we're going to be selling in the market again in a couple weeks, where we anticipate to save $3.4 to $3.7 million just by issuing debt for around 2.1 to 2.5%. So we're in pretty good shape in that sense. So really what it is we've been very strategic, very conscious about what it means to issue debt. We know when you issue debt, that's kind of the first payment you got to make before everything else to your bondholders, that you want to make sure you take it seriously and you understand what's going into it. On slide 13, as I mentioned, we've been doing refunding when it makes sense for the city, and it allows us to layer on our debt capacity. So if we come before the city council and then at future meetings, the council will understand that we're doing this in a very strategic manner. So I don't know if you want to go to slide 15. So, as I mentioned, we started out of the gate with a $19.3 million problem. That was just kind of a basic level service, assumed growth in level revenue. And after we asked for departments kind of what it is they need, the so-called level service, contractual increases, wish list sort of stuff, it's gone up to $28.9 million. We know that does not include offsets to certain grants and offsets to where it can come down a little bit easy, but there's a lot of requests for departments of stuff that they would love to have back from years of cutbacks. However, we're not in a position to grant all those, so if we're able to do so, it'll be done with being very strategic and very targeted in where we're going to invest any limited resources. But I'll know more of how we're going to approach that as we kind of see how the revenue picture develops in the coming, probably 3 to 4 weeks. With that, just to remind the council, although it seems daunting to have a $20 million problem, 25, 28, whatever you want to call it, based upon the numbers you're seeing, we have balanced $22 million in FY17. We balanced $18.5 million deficit in FY16. We've been doing it for years. Does that mean it's going to be there and be done easily for FY18? No, but it means that we've, do everything we can to minimize the impact on our residents and impact on services. There are certain costs that grow outside our control, unfunded mandates, which the body's well aware of, and I'll do my best to communicate all of those things as the budget develops, but in addition, when the mayor releases his budget to the council. With that, I'll take any questions.
Any questions for TJ? Councilor Walsh?
There will potentially be cuts. We asked departments for 3% cuts to their budget. Our goal is to maintain core services and to avoid layoffs to the extent possible. We've been able to avoid layoffs the last few years. We haven't used reserves the last few years. Our goal is to do that again, but we won't know officially until probably April, early to mid-April, to really know. Under the entire budget. So they were given a target number under their budget that they had to get to and recommend to us what the cuts would be, and then provide an impact statement to the administration to say, if you were to take this cut, here's the impact to the department, here's the impact to the taxpayer, here's the impact to the resident, and then we weigh all that based upon what we have to do to achieve balance. Correct. We do the same thing. Last year, I believe it was 5%, so we're getting better. It was 10%, then it was 5%, now it's 3%, so we're getting better.
Councilor Williams. It's
a tough call. Ideally, we'd like to have all of it prior to adopting the budget in May or June, but we do enjoy looking at what's happening during the summer, because during the summer months and other time where we see what the market's doing, we've taken all that kind of data and kind of factored it into where we're going. But I mean, ideally, we'd like to have it, but I can't make any promises.
Councilor Allen.
Yeah, TJ, a couple things. This is great information. I like a lot of information, but here you put the height of the budget balance in the last couple of years.
Yep.
And this year's numbers a little different, but in the same pattern, the same general area. You can see this year's budget balancing not necessarily being the same as these others, but within the realm of reality. Is it you feeling confident that that's not beyond the number that we can easily get?
Yeah, I mean, I'm cautiously optimistic. I think we're pretty close. I mean, I don't have a full path to how we see balance yet, and I won't. And it's not uncommon in the end of February to not know exactly how we're going to get there. But I have a pretty good sense of the direction we're going. I think I need a few more indicators, namely what's happening with the new growth and the property values is the stuff that we can control. Looking at their motor vehicle commitment, looking at some of these other areas of revenue that we typically have some areas that look like we have some potential, and looking at some of the historical data that shows us how we're trending so we can project out. So certainly wouldn't say I'm 100% there, but I would say we're getting 85% there. I think, like I said, I'll know more in April when the House budget comes out, and I'll know more in April, mid-April, when we start seeing January till now property sales. And we know there's going to be some new growth because we know Chinese Railway is going to be coming online. We know there's a TIF there, but there's going to be some new growth within what they've built. We know there's some new housing starts that are happening. We know there's stuff out there, but I'm reluctant to put any numbers to it. But I think we're heading in the right direction.
My other question is, this year, we were going to add a couple of code enforcement positions, a more inspector, a lawyer, to help with the processing of code enforcement cases, particularly legal cases. I don't know if that has happened yet. I know it's been kind of...
Yeah, it's been discussed. We needed a few things to happen prior to, but we're going to hopefully be making an announcement soon about the legal code stuff. I've talked to the president just the other day about it to know where we're going. I'm not sure exactly if we're going to be doing more housing code inspectors yet, because I think there's some backlog issues we got to address, but it's certainly on our radar that we've been discussing.
The idea with the lawyer was one of the lawyers...
Is to get rid of the backlog. Yep.
But I think that was the idea of hiring the lawyers.
Correct. And the lawyers is about to be, the funding or the position's about to be announced, or however it's working out. I got to work out the details with the president, but we're about to, announce that we're prepared to fill the position, or about to make sure it's funded to do everything. So I think that's more to come on that.
I know in my area, and a lot of the neighborhood groups, that's the main issue. Particularly one night, we live about 4 neighborhood groups a month. And one particularly, that's all they talk about, is getting this code enforcement people, the new people up to speed, that group. Campus neighborhood group, Marcus and I meet with them, they meet monthly. And it's not the only issue they talk about, but it's by farm, by the main.
Yeah, and we're aware of the problem. We're aware that there's a desire to have more code enforcement inspectors out there. I'm not there yet in having to fund the positions, because my understanding from Steve Desolitz and the code enforcement is they still have capacity to go in and enforce more. But the more they enforce, the bigger the backlog grows. So we need to take care of the backlog first, and then make the policy decision on how do we continue to battle the blight. We understand where the council's coming from. We know where you guys are all coming from. We get it. But my fiduciary responsibility is to make sure that's sustainable long term, and that if we go in adding positions, that we're going to be able to keep the positions long term, and that there's.
You guys know that Steve Desolitz got a big award for the Meyer Valley project?
I did not know that.
Yeah, I'm not sure where that was from. They have, they're a big social piece
Oh, they've done a tremendous job.
So it's noticed by the neighborhood.
Councilor Shea.
Yeah, there's no deficit. This is just the numbers. I'll have to correct those numbers for. There's no deficit for FY17. Yeah, so this is the adopted budget. So you guys, as a city council, amended the budget to reflect. We just haven't updated the amended. Correct. We should be doing the FY17 amended budget. Correct. Thank you.
Any other questions from the council? One of the reasons why I wanted TJ to come down this early in the process is because oftentimes we advocate after the fact when the budget is already completed or being presented to us. And considering the fact that we don't have the ability to add to the budget, I figured this would be a good opportunity for us to advocate for what we feel are the needs in our wards and in our neighborhoods and in our city. So if anyone feels that there's anything that should be addressed in this year's budget that has not been addressed in the past, or you want to advocate for the continued funding for something, this is the opportunity. And so if there are any other questions for TJ? Councilor Walsh.
Well, you guys voted in the Community Preservation Act, so I think that might go a long way towards the Campanile. Well, right now, the Department of Capital Asset Construction is, I don't know if they just finished interviewing or in the process of interviewing to do a further study to see if there's other alternatives to help fix the Campanile. We've had one quote that we've been talking about, the same number for $23 million for years. But I'm not so sure it's gone up. I think there's other ways that we can look at it. I mean, that one solution wasn't the only solution, I guess is my point. And we're looking at other ways to kind of either get the number down or start getting on a strategy on how to make sure we fund it. Yeah, and the goal for all that is we don't want to impact our summer program. We don't want to impact our parks to the extent that we need to. I mean, we don't want to make any cuts that are not necessary. Yeah, so our goal is to keep parks open, fully fund splash pads, fully fund pools and all those things. I don't foresee that changing, but in the off chance it does, we'll have a full dialogue with the council.
Anyone else? TJ, Councilor Williams, go ahead.
Talk about the fire trucks themselves. I mean, we're actually on a pretty aggressive replacement schedule now that we fund every year in the budget. I believe we funded 2 out of the gate, and we're funding 1 practically every year now going forward. And that's not in addition, or that's in addition to whatever the MGM host community agreement calls for. So there'll be more. So we're being very aggressive. Our whole goal, and my whole goal, and certainly the goal of my team here, is if we can fund things in the operating budget and through a lease purchasing fashion, we want to. You know, I believe DPW is coming before the body next week to talk about a 5-year lease for 5 trash trucks. We want that to be the case because we want to be able just to know the number every year and get on a schedule that before it becomes a crisis and we have to replace a fire truck that's 20 years old, it's replaced at 15 years before useful life ends out, and then we're using it either as a backup or some other way. So we've been pushing that real hard. Firefighter's been our first test case, and it's worked out extremely well.
Councilor Hurst.
I'm not sure. We're not there at that point yet. We still haven't had the fire department's budget hearing to hear what's being submitted. I've seen what's being submitted, but I can't really comment on what the fire chief is thinking or the commissioner's thinking. But I know, we'll have that conversation when the hearing comes along.
Councilor Fenton.
Thank you, Mr. President. TJ, in the savings that we'll realize, and by the way, congratulations to you and the mayor and your team for finding these reduced interest rates for the bonds. That's really tremendous. In the money that we'll save over the course of the next 6 years, which you estimate to be $3.4 million, that enables us to do, I suspect, some more capital projects on our capital project list. Can you maybe summarize for the council what the top 5 items are on that capital improvement list?
For any new projects that are coming before the council?
The capital improvement list that's adopted annually. So those will all be projects that are not yet approved.
Yeah, so we haven't released our capital improvement plan for FY 18 through 24, 25. So it's not anything final or official, but we're working on that now. I know there's been conversations about Stern Square and Doria Way being one of them, the projects that we want to do for economic development purposes downtown. I know there's talk of a few other projects. A lot of it is about affordability and making sure that they rank high enough in the capital improvement plan. So I don't know if I'm ready to give you 5 at this point, but in the next couple weeks or so, well, I have to have it done by March 30th, so my capital analyst will make sure it's done by March 30th, right? So, but no, I don't know exactly the list yet, because we got to look and make some things on the list is high up, like the Campanile per se, but $23 million or $20 million or whatever the number may be, it's kind of tough to authorize the debt for, but there may be other projects that we need to do. So I could try to get you a list in the next couple of days once I kind of hone in on it.
All right. Mr. President, I don't know who your designee is this year to the Capital Improvement Committee, but if they haven't met yet, we got a month to finalize it and reprioritize for next year. That's all. That's my only point. It seems, it's really wonderful news to be able to refinance all those bonds, and it presents an opportunity as well.
I'm happy to have the conversation. Our capital committee, I don't know if it's meeting again, but I'm certainly happy to sit down with anyone and talk about all the projects, council included, if we want to just go through the projects.
Well, they have to meet to approve the capital plan.
And right, we've already had those meetings.
Oh, you already did?
Yeah, we've had a number of meetings where we've met to go through priority rank, figure out where they stack up.
I understand. Okay, well, that's great.
The City Council designee on the Capital Improvement Committee is Councilor Rook. Councilor Rook. We have about 11 minutes until our regular meeting. TJ, I just have one quick question. Councilor Allen covered the code enforcement issue pretty well. That was one of my main concerns. The other one that I wanted to ask you about was the continued funding for after-school programs that Councilor Allen and Councilor Hurst and myself have advocated for over the last few years. Are we aligned to fund that program the same as last year? Are we adding to it or cutting?
At this point, our goal is to keep where we're at, but I know Pat Sullivan has requested additional resources to grow the program and to do some other targeted after-school initiatives. So that when we have his hearing, we'll be able to go through that in some considerable detail to know exactly what he's thinking and where it's going to be. But our goal is to not lose any ground of where we are with our after-school program. We know the importance of it, and so we're going to keep pushing towards that.
Thank you. Any other questions? Oh, seeing none. We'll conclude our Committee of the Whole meeting. There are 10 minutes left until our regular hearings meeting. Thank you, TJ.
Thank you.